The Mello TV Evening News at 8 is brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Coronavirus is in Jamaica, and I know you feel scared and worried. But you can't let COVID-19 divide us. Coronavirus infects all kinds of people. It doesn't discriminate. So why should you? When someone coughs or sneezes or shows signs of the virus, tell them to call 888-1-LOVE immediately. And remember, stay 3 feet away, but don't attack or disrespect them, because we're all in this thing together. Come on, Jamaica, cut the hate and don't discriminate. Let us stand together and fight COVID-19 as one family, one nation.
Coming up in this evening's news, government encourages employers to make use of the Flexible Work Arrangements Act 2014 after the work from home order is lifted on June 1. Over 30 persons are now homeless after fire destroyed their homes on Rum Lane this morning. Still tonight, in a Mello TV news update, a 32-year-old carpenter has been charged with the May 17 murder of 15-year-old ASCOT High School student Norville Hall. And Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries says the government is moving to ensure that consumers have increased protection through the merger of the Consumer Affairs Commission and the Fair Trading Commission.
Good evening. In breaking news tonight, 5 additional persons have tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the total of confirmed cases in Jamaica to 569. In a media release moments ago, the Ministry of Health and Wellness stated that the 5 new confirmed cases comprise of 3 persons that are imported, 1 from the group of repatriated Jamaicans processed at the Falmouth Pier recently, and 2 are from the group that returned to the island from the United States on May 13. The mode of transmission for the 2 remaining cases are under investigation. In the meantime, the ministry is reporting that 12 more patients were released from isolation today, taking the total of persons that have recovered from the virus to 279. Meanwhile, the government is encouraging employers to make use of the Flexible Work Arrangements Act 2014 after the work from home order is lifted on June 1. During a digital press briefing held at Jamaica House yesterday evening, Prime Minister Andrew Holness called on employers to look into offering flexible work hours.
So our new theme is work safe and work smart. So work that does not need physical presence at the workplace. We are encouraging our employers to dialogue with their employees, negotiate with their employees, use the facilities that are available under the flexible work arrangement legislation to put in place the framework, the measures, the systems, the solutions that will ensure that persons who have children at home, by virtue of school being out, persons who are ill, if they can be facilitated with these measures, let us use them. We have had this law for the last 6 years. It hasn't been fully utilized. Let us utilize it now.
Prime Minister Holness further stated that the PSOJ continues to work on protocols that will ensure the safe return of workers come June 1.
The PSOJ has been working with the health authorities, and we are well advanced with developing the infection prevention and safety protocols that would be needed for the workplace. I've heard the concerns of certain groups from certain quarters, and I want to take this opportunity to clarify the government's intent in allowing the work from home orders to expire. We're not saying that everyone should return to work regardless of their circumstances. We acknowledge that there are persons who would have responsibilities by virtue of schools being closed and having children at home to attend to. We acknowledge, and we have said, that there are persons with comorbidities who should be very careful how they return to work. And therefore, we expect that the employers would exercise a high level of understanding in this period. But we also have the obligation, the duty to return our economy to its full productive capacity as quickly as possible.
Still making news tonight, in addressing concerns that the government is reopening the economy too quickly, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says that the government has been very careful not to shut down the economy completely by implementing certain restrictions during this COVID-19 pandemic.
There is a sense as well that the government is moving too quickly to reopen the economy. And I want to address this point briefly. The Jamaican government has been very careful not to shut down the economy. Somehow, in the crescendo of opinions, we forget that there was an overwhelming call from certain quarters to shut down the economy. I mean, it's as if those calls were not made. The government did not respond to that. The government outlined a process that if cases reached a certain level and it became situationally appropriate, then we would still act, but with measure. And you would have seen that where it became appropriate, the government acted proportionately in a measured way using the available data. And so you would have seen the government utilize community quarantine. We had lockdown of one parish, and we contained workplace clusters, but we never shut down the entire economy.
During yesterday's digital press briefing, Prime Minister Holness said the situation has reached the point where restrictions have to be changed in order to return to the full operation of the economy.
And now we are at the point where we have to now change those restrictions to allow for the full operation of our economy. How is this going to be done? We do not intend to do this without giving notice. We don't intend to do this without developing the protocols to do so. And we don't intend to do this without having the public health science behind what we are doing, justifying the actions. And as I have said before, the evidence before us, looking at the number of cases that we have, the number of cases that are still active, looking at the number of deaths that have resulted, looking at the number of recoveries, looking at the infection rate, and looking at the level of citizen cooperation, which is, in my opinion, probably the most important variable. How are the citizens behaving? Are they acting responsibly? And I think I would, if I were to give a grade, I would say that 70% of Jamaicans are acting responsibly. The greatest challenge I'm seeing is for us to observe social distancing. The Jamaican citizens have been acting in a responsible way generally. The challenge that we face now, as we move to reintegrate our returning population, is for them to act with an even higher level of responsibility as they are reintegrated into the society.
The Prime Minister further stated that returning the economy to full capacity will require the country's borders to be reopened eventually.
In returning the economy to full capacity, it will require us reopening our borders at some time. We can't continue to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. So the debate will ensue, I'm sure, about whether or not it is time or we should wait. I wish to remind persons that we don't want to survive the pandemic and die in the recession. So we have to manage both things. We have to manage the epidemic and ensure that we do not have an extended recession.
In other news, Minister of Local Government and Community Development Desmond McKenzie says the ministry is pleased with the response of operators of bars across the island after the reopening order was implemented on May 19.
I must say that we are pleased with the response from the operators of bars across the country. We have sampled since the period that the order was lifted, more than 2,500 bars have been inspected. And we are seeing where the general acceptance of the guidelines that has been laid out, Prime Minister, have been met. We have seen where, especially in the corporate area, there's a very high percentage of compliance with operators taking the necessary steps to ensure in the areas such as where there are no stools, benches, chairs, or tables. We have seen a high of over 60% in those areas where we have asked where gaming operations in terms of machines are placed in areas where social distancing can be practiced. That is one area, Prime Minister, that we are not happy about because we are only enjoying over 30% compliance in that area.
Minister McKenzie also gave a response on the way that bar operators and patrons alike have been adhering to the safety protocols.
In terms of putting in the necessary facilities, we see where the bartenders are wearing masks. I have over 70%. The presence of washing areas and sanitization for persons attending the bar, over 70%. We're seeing where the observing of the curfew hours is extremely high. Over 90% of the operations are complying with that order. And surprisingly, Prime Minister and colleagues, in the area of 5 persons, including the bartender, based on the survey that we have done, over 80% compliance in that area, and that is one area that we are very pleased. We are also observing the same discipline within the areas of the dominoes and other games where the compliance is relatively good. This survey that is being conducted on over 11,000 bars, village bars and taverns across the country is not the final decision. We are doing an exercise that will determine, but the final decision is that of the Ministry of Health, and they have been working closely with us to ensure that we do the survey.
Meanwhile, Minister McKenzie outlined that the ministry has found that many of the bar operators are operating without the proper licenses.
One of what we have found in the exercise that we have been undertaking is that a significant number of these bars are operating without the requisite permits, spirit license, food angler's permit, trade license, etc., is one thing. But the protocol is being worked out between the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry of Justice to ensure that we work with these operators to comply fully.
In news from the capital, over 30 persons are homeless following a fire that destroyed their home on Rum Lane this morning. More on this story with our Mello TV reporter, Brianna Chambers.
Over 30 persons are now homeless, including 20 children, due to a fire destroying extended family dwelling along Hanover Street that spread to Rum Lane this morning. Reports are that the fire began shortly after 6 a.m. along Hanover Street at a furniture store, then spread to Rum Lane. Persons managed to escape without any injuries. Our news team went on the scene and spoke with residents. Naldana Dixon, one of the residents who lost her home during the fire, explained what had transpired during the course of the incident.
About 6 o'clock this morning, I heard shouting outside, screaming. My mother was shouting out, so fire, 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 help, help. So everybody run outside. I run outside. Didn't have on any clothes. I had to run back in to sort out myself. When I came out, I see next door blazing in fire. So the guys were throwing water. Were called by the central police station. I told them to call the fire brigade. They said they will call them, but it took them like about an hour or so to come, which in they came. 2 units came at the same time. One was at the back and one was at the front. So they were trying their best to get out the fire, but luckily, thank God for the guys them in the community, they come and assist. Around 30 adults and around 20 children were are homeless at the moment. And most of them aren't working right now because of the corona. So I hope they can get some assistance as soon as possible. Most of them have schoolwork was supposed to be done this morning. On the Zoom class at their schools, there are no internet because everything got burned up. So they need all the help they can get as best as possible. This don't need no politics to say who are PMP or labor rights. They're all children, families who are hardworking. They just need some assistance in the best way possible. We have to just pray and hope for the best. We have a little dollar put down, even though nobody don't really have nothing now because of the corona. All that we have are to buy up food stuff and those things for our children so they won't be hungry. So we have to just start over again our way to see if we get some assistance or whatever is possible. The greatest one, some of us might have beds, can maybe catch up somewhere and sleep again or go to our next neighbor who haven't got any destroyer to maybe go lie down or something.
Rose Stevens, another resident who lost her house during the fire, explained that she managed to save some items from the house before it was totally burnt.
The fire was around 5 minutes to 7 this morning. So I never was fully asleep because I don't sleep late. I was just lying down through the school, not in session, and I decided to lie down. And I only hear some man outside calling, Rose, Rose, get up, get up. So them always bother me, so I not pay them no mind, but them say, Rose, come out, fire. So when I run out and I look up the road, I saw the fire and I see that it was serious. So I run in back and call my grandkids and say, no, come out, grab the bag with the papers until me start to help come in. And I got the help to take out the things them but the house damaged. To be frank, the things them safe, the life safe, but the structure mash up. So if anybody willing to help with some material, I will be grateful. Give God thanks, my life and my God kids them life spare. Thank you, Jesus.
Reporting for Mello TV News, I'm Brianna Chambers.
In news from Clarendon, angry residents of Jacob's Hut protested the death of 18-year-old Tyrone Taylor, whom they say was hit from his motorcycle by a police patrol unit on Labor Day. More on this story with our reporter, Killeen May.
There was anger and tension in Jacob's Hut in Clarendon earlier today as residents protested the death of an 18-year-old man. He has been identified as Tyrone Taylor, who died yesterday at hospital after he had succumbed to injuries he sustained from being hit from his motorcycle on Monday, May 25. It is reported that the incident happened happened minutes after 3 p.m. on Labor Day in an area known as Osborne's store in Jacob's Hut in Clarendon. It is alleged that Taylor was hit from his motorcycle by a police patrol unit. Outraged residents took to the streets earlier today with placards and also mounted roadblocks demanding the police officers involved to be brought to justice. Taylor's girlfriend, who spoke with our news team, had this to say regarding the incident.
Go kill him. No right. Lick him off a bite for no damn reason. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. Tell me now. And I use the eye force and I own if keep pussy. But he said that kill we have. What kind of style that? Wickedness, man. What kind of style that kill we have? Eh? Who has justice to my boyfriend? I'm not take him out. I'm not saying that I won't kill him. We can't remember me tell you that. Yo, man, justice, man. Remember me tell you. Remember me tell you, mom, fierce. Me I find out that who lick him off for that. Remember me tell you that. We want justice.
The Jamaica Defense Force was called in to assist the police in restoring calm to the area. The matter has been reported to the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDICOM. We will bring you more in this story in subsequent newscast. Reporting from Mello TV News, I'm Kylene May.
In news from St. Catherine, the St. Catherine police are reporting that a woman that was seriously wounded by a man who chopped her in Guys Hill on Monday is now in hospital in stable condition. The man that wounded the woman took his own life sometime later by hanging himself. He has since been identified as 51-year-old Raymond Kelly from Tavern Hill district in the parish. Reports from the police coming into our news center are that Kelly and the woman were involved in a domestic dispute on Monday when he used a machete to inflict chop wounds to the woman's body before fleeing the scene. A report was made to the police, who conducted a search for the accused. At approximately 11:30 a.m. that day, his body was discovered hanging by a piece of rope from a tree. Back in the capital, the Kingston police are asking members of the public for assistance to identify the killer or killers behind the death of a man who was fatally shot at his home along Church Street in downtown Kingston on Monday. The deceased has been identified as 35-year-old Dwayne Joseph, laborer of a Church Street address. Reports are that shortly after 4 a.m., Joseph was at his home when the men armed with guns forced their way inside the dwelling and shot him multiple times. Residents in the community summoned the police, and upon their arrival, Joseph was discovered suffering from gunshot wounds. He was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. In a Mello TV News update, a 32-year-old carpenter has been charged with the May 17 murder of 15-year-old ASCOT High School student Norville Hall of 2nd Street in Kingston. The accused has been identified as Jesse Jackson, otherwise called Little Rick, of Victoriatown in Kingston. Police reports state that Jackson was charged last Friday with murder and conspiracy to murder after he was pointed out in an identification parade. His court date is being finalized. In other news, Director of Special Projects and Strategic Initiatives at the Caribbean Maritime University CMU, Elaine Hayden, has made claims that Professor Fritz Pinnock of the Caribbean Maritime University was the person that directed a company known as Logistics Company 1 that was engaged by the CMU to provide building materials valued at approximately $1 million. Hayden, who is a trained information technology professional and project manager, made the claim during yesterday's sitting of the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. Reports are that Logistics Company 1, which is allegedly registered in Florida as Business Supply Source BSS, has found itself at the center of the scandal involving Pinnock and the former Minister of Education, Ruel Reid. The expenditure of nearly $1 million with Logistics 1 was the largest contract of many by the university. That was found to be in breach of government procurement guidelines based on a subsequent special audit report received from the Auditor General. Hayden further informed the committee that her project team constantly kept Pinnock abreast of their efforts to find a company to source these sandwich panels that were to be used in the construction of several buildings and worked under the guidance of the university's professor. And those were some of the stories making news. I'll return with other updates as Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, Floyd Green, says the government is moving to ensure that consumers have increased protection through the merger of the Consumer Affairs Commission and the Fair Trading Commission. We'll now take a break, then join Christopher Scott with sports.
Coronavirus is in Jamaica, and I know you feel scared and worried. But you can't let COVID-19 divide us. Coronavirus infects all kinds of people. It doesn't discriminate. So why should you? When someone coughs or sneezes or shows signs of the virus, tell them to call 888-1-LOVE immediately. And remember, stay 3 feet away, but don't attack or disrespect them, because we're all in this thing together. Come on, Jamaica, cut the hate and don't discriminate. Let us stand together and fight COVID-19 as one family, one nation.